Alright, I'm Lee Hawthorn and I'm going to be speaking to Eyeconic today. DNR out now, make sure you go and find that on whatever streaming platform you listen to first, or whatever you prefer. How are you feeling about the album now that it's out, finally?
I feel good, man. It feels like a weight has been lifted off my shoulders. The fact that it's finally out there and it's no longer just my thing. The world kind of understands and knows about the things that I was going through.
And what about the reception to it? Because it's been like very positive. It's been kind of drawn out from when you first kind of released Die Alone up till now. It's been like a year, maybe? Has it been about a year?
Almost. Yeah. I released Die Alone in August last year.
Yeah, so 10 months anyway. So like, how has the reception been from that moment to now the album is out, and how have you found the reaction to the album as a whole?
It's wild because Die Alone, when I dropped Die Alone, Empath, everyone probably thought it was going into a very grungy type of sound, but that's not the case at all. I wanted to, I don't know, just test the waters with certain sounds, but also not reveal too much of the album.
Yeah, I did think that as well, because I was as I was listening back, and more so for this interview, I realised kind of like how much you kind of swerved everybody, because it did seem like you were like doing this grunge album. In fact, I was telling everybody, oh my god, Eyeconic's doing a grunge album, how amazing is that? And then all of a sudden it's not, and it's like there's lots of kind of different influences on it, from kind of Drake drums to kind of the Grieve sound that I know that you're a big fan of, to Loyal Corner, who I know we spoke about recently that you haven't really listened to, but it's kind of very much in that vein. How did that all kind of come about? Were you a bit worried about kind of putting so many different kind of sounds in there, or was it just natural?
Initially, there was actually a fully grunge song where there was no rapping on it at all. There's so much music that didn't make it on, but I was being very selective. I was thinking about what type of message I actually want to put across throughout the music, because I could go the way where it was initially going, where it was just going to be like, yeah, I'm feeling bad, this is how I feel about it, and this is why. But that's not really the energy I want to give out, because let's say if DNR was to be, because it is the posthumous album while I'm still alive, if it was to become a posthumous album, or if it was to become the last piece of music I ever released, is that really the last message I want to give out to the world type of thing? That's why I experimented with different sounds, and I felt like only sounds that I felt were appropriate. And I feel like even though sonically some songs might sound very different, due to the overall theme of the album, I think they work pretty well.
Yeah, I think that's something that everyone kind of said about you from Sink or Swim up till now, is that your projects are very kind of cohesive and concise and do kind of all fit together. Is that something that you like really kind of deliberately do and like plan out?
With DNR, it was the only one that I didn't sit there and plan, because a lot of the music I would just record and then just leave it, or I would vent, etc. So it was just mainly therapeutic music I was making for very therapeutic reasons. But then, yeah, it just my friend Bobby, he's also a rapper, No One Self. He was featured on Sink or Swim. He listened to the whole album and was like, you know, it would be a shame if none of this would actually get released. So then I started piecing things together and seeing what would work. And I had like a bunch of voicemails. By the way, those voicemails weren't actually recorded for the album. It was voicemails I already had. So I was just like, okay, cool, this will work here, this will work here. And then a bit of dialogue between songs to kind of create a very cohesive project. Looking back on it, I thought about, you know what, I should just fully go in and on my, like, get fully inspired by like the Good Kid, Mad Cities, the To Pimp a Butterflies, and create a fully cohesive thing. But I wanted everything to be organic. So I didn't want to phone up my friend and be like, oh, could you say this, by the way, on a voicemail? Like, I didn't want to do that. Like, I just wanted to work with what I already had.
Yeah. And when you kind of mentioned Sink or Swim a bit there, and you knew I was going to ask you this, is DNR your debut album, or was Sink or Swim actually an album? Were you wrong 3 years ago when we did that interview when you said Sink or Swim's not an album? It's definitely an album. Because I remember
it's whatever you want it to be, man. It's art.
I mean, it's an album, and it is a phenomenal album as well. And I think
Thank you.
Something else that we said in that interview way back when was about what would it mean for you for that album to be a success. And the first thing you said was if I wrote a review, which I think I did in the end, but won't be this time, I guess. Well, I did that end of year review where I put it in the top 10, so I'm counting that. And then the other thing was for it to have longevity and for it to be listened to in a few months' time, in a few years' time. And I think that's definitely the case. In fact, I think you said before that it's kind of the streams have like went up more than ever probably more than in that first kind of stretch that was released.
Yeah, it just keeps climbing now.
Yeah, and what does that mean to you, kind of looking back on that album and how much it was a success?
It means it was what's the word for it? Precursor to what I'm about to do now.
Yeah.
But also, I feel like I kind of strayed away from the initial grime sound that I came out with. But that was all because everyone expected me to do grime. So I was like, well, I'm not gonna do what you expect me to do, and then do something else. But I feel like I've learned a lot from. Like, I've actually listened back to it recently. Certain songs made me cringe. Just like, why did you think that was good? But overall, I would like to re-release it maybe in the future, re-record certain parts and just get the strongest songs out and make a re-release.
That sounds interesting. What would it mean for this album to be a success then? Because if that was the goal then, is the goal still the same? Are you still all about kind of making this timeless music, or have you got kind of other goals as well?
I want this album to be listened to 10 years from now.
Let's do another interview then.
We can sort it out. Then.
Yeah. You mentioned how on this album you kind of didn't want to do so much grind sound and you want to kind of move away from that, surprise people. But what was interesting to me as I've been listening back to your music and listening to that interview that we did all them years ago, it was interesting that you were never a grime MC anyway. You started out doing hip hop, you started out doing that kind of Mac Miller sort of sound, and then you did kind of Sink or Swim where there was the few tracks, but even on Sink or Swim there's still a lot of hip hop on there. And even afterwards when you've done like Skeletons, Northeast Weather, you've done more hip hop than you have grime. So for this album to not really have any out and out grime songs, Little Pressure's a bit kind of mixing it a bit.
It's the same tempo as grime.
Yeah.
Same with We're Moving. Those were both initially written to grime beats. I wrote We're Moving. When did you host that event that you had me, I think Max Gavins, and Edons?
I don't even know which.
It was
event
one of your birthdays.
Well, I've only put one event on my birthday, so that'll be 24th birthday, so that'll be 2 years ago.
Yeah, so We're Moving was written then.
Wow.
Actually, yeah.
Yeah. And how do you feel about that though, in that you're kind of, or at least you were kind of pigeonholed a little bit in that grime sound, even though that was never what you were? Were you proud of being able to be that good at grime, but were you a little bit annoyed that the hip hop stuff kind of got a little bit ignored?
I was appreciating the fact that someone would take their time out of the day to actually give my music a chance, whether it was the grime or whether they preferred the hip hop. I was just very happy, and I'm still happy. Like whether you enjoy more of the grimy stuff or the more hip hop boom bap stuff or the in the middle trappy stuff, then like I'm just appreciative of it all.
Yeah, I think we obviously going to mention Spit One Lyric in this interview, but what I actually want to talk about is more about how it's kind of been replaced from what I see, in that people at your gigs will still ask for Spit One Lyric, obviously, but it's not the one anymore. I feel like Die Alone and maybe Sober Up as a kind of sleeper. How does that feel to a fight? Because I think a lot of artists, when they have kind of like one-hit wonders, we think of like massive artists, they never kind of overcome that. They never kind of overcome that track. Whereas it seems like you have, obviously you're not maybe on that level, but even in this local scene, it's very unlikely for a track to get overplaced, kind of thing. How does that feel to have done that?
I felt very good because I was watching a Drake interview. I think it was the Rap Radar one, where he talks about that when he goes on tour again, he doesn't want to be like the last song he performs. He doesn't want it to be the song he was performing last on the last tour, and usually the song he performs last is his biggest hit. Yeah. So how
does Drake do that?
Well, Drake is just the GOAT.
Every song is his biggest hit. Yeah. But yeah, sorry, carry on.
Yeah, he's got more slaps than the Beatles. But that's a bar. But yeah, it feels good because it feels like people are connecting with the other sounds that I explore sonically as well. So that's good to know. And also, it's a bit strange because the songs like Die Alone, they came from very real situations. So everyone's like, oh yeah, perform Die Alone. And I'm on stage there, like, shouting my trauma at you. You're shouting it back at me. But to you, it's still just a song. To me, these are all real feelings that I've felt at one point. And it's just a bit of a strange one that I sometimes think about before I go to bed. But yeah, that's one of the weird things.
I disagree with you there though, because you said that when you're performing and when people are screaming your lyrics back at you, that they just think it's a song. But I don't think that's true at all, because I mean, for me personally, when I heard Die Alone, like, it connected, and I feel like that's why it's so big, is because it's connected with a load of people. You know, mental health is a massive thing at the minute. Everybody pretty much within the scene and who goes to hip-hop events and that, you'll know have some sort of story with depression, anxiety, whatever it might be. And I think with your songs, especially on DNR, it's about connecting with them. So I don't think it's so much about them just think it's a song. I think it's about them feeling something, about you kind of recognising them. I think it's much bigger than that.
Yeah, maybe I just articulated myself wrong there. But yeah, no, it makes sense. I get asked to do Empath as well, but when after recording the chorus for Empath, I actually lost my voice for a week.
Yeah.
So I'm not like, I always think about it. I'm like, wait, where during the set list can I lose my voice? So that's why I still haven't performed it, but I will eventually. Maybe as an encore.
Fair. Hopefully we'll get back to gigs sooner. You mentioned there about how you were kind of working on some of the songs way back when 2 years ago. And I remember our first kind of got demos for like Die Alone, I think 96 might have been in there, and a couple others. I think it was kind of October 2018. So that's kind of a long time for someone to be working on music. I think in today's age, it's usually people kind of get a beat, record a song within a week, and then have kind of it done, and then it's out. Whereas you kind of really took your time to do things. When did you kind of notice that this project, either while you were writing it or while you were recording stuff, because I know you did work on some stuff later as well, when did you realise that this was like something where it was like an album and that was good and ready?
When I uploaded it to the distribution website, I think it was when I finally recorded it all, and I started getting all the mixed and mastered versions back, and then I could actually listen to it bit by bit. I was also sending it to Bobby. He's pretty much the executive producer here. Like he would tell. He's very mad at me because I actually changed the instrumental for Be Free.
Right.
Be Free initially was a completely different song, and now the instrumental is a lot more jazzy. That's why I did the ska singing at the end.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was around the time when I finally started getting the masters back that I actually realized like this is something here. Because when it's just separate tracks, or if it's just sitting on your computer, you don't really see it. You don't see the bigger picture. But it was nice to sit back and see it play out in front of me.
Yeah. Cool. So you mentioned that you released Die Alone like nearly a year ago, and we've said it's been kind of a big process. It seems like it's kind of been like a snowball effect with each single as well, where like it's kind of, as much as I still think Die Alone is probably the best single that you put out, it's still, it was a good starting point, and then it got bigger. How did it feel when you put Die Alone out and it wasn't even the full version, which we'll get to, and it got so much acclaim? That was the Ride track of the year, wasn't it?
Yeah.
It got played on kind of Represent, which I don't think any other Northeast rapper has ever been played on.
Outside Danilani.
Yeah, and it's like you've done so many great things, which with that song as like a starting point. How did that feel, putting that first song out and knowing that it was like getting received well?
It felt great. It felt like I was finally creating moments, because there was so many times I released songs, but those songs were just songs. It was never a moment. Like people could probably, like you can probably sit there and be like, oh, you know what? I actually remember the first time I heard Die Alone. So that's what I try to do. When I noticed that was a moment, I just try and create another one. And I know it will never be the same. Like Spit One Lyric was a moment, but Die Alone and Spit One Lyric are still very different songs. But still pushed me into new places and raised awareness of my existence.
Yeah. When you compare Die Alone and Spit One Lyric, how does that feel, knowing it kind of, does it feel like a missed opportunity for Spit One Lyric, considering how you marketed them very differently? Yeah,
it upsets me a bit. That's why I'm thinking about the re-release, to try and improve it quality-wise as well, maybe new music video as well, and just try and push it to new people. And maybe finally get the Spit One Lyric remix done.
Get DW on there, as you've asked for however long.
For 3 years now.
I mean, maybe one day. And then after Die Alone, Empath was the next single, which maybe didn't do kind of the same, but it was also very successful in other ways. It was a good second single, and it got the BBC Teas Introducing Track of the Week.
The first track of the week of the decade,
yeah,
man, bro.
I think it was Rihanna's first track of the week as well. It was one of the first few.
One love to Rihanna. One
Yeah.
love to Rihanna.
She's amazing, and she's done amazing things with that show. Obviously, a little bit biased, but the way that she's kind of diversified it, we're getting more dance producers, getting a lot more hip hop stuff on there, getting just a lot more different sounds, which has like been really great, especially for me as coming from the hip hop background and maybe not being able to do so much in the Northeast because it was already kind of there on that show. But with Tease, it's like been really great, and I do think that you maybe unintentionally spearheaded that a bit. I think between you and Shaq, because that
One love to Shaq.
yeah, Shaq especially, yeah. And that track of the week, I don't know if I've told you this before, but obviously I'm kind of just horrifically obsessed with social media and engagement and all that sort of thing. And that post is one of the most shared posts in Tease Introduction history.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and it was like a real kind of moment because it was a risk, to be honest, to make a hip hop track of the week for a local BBC audience is like mental, really.
And when you think of the type of hip hop track it really is as well, it's not something I would personally play on daytime radio. I felt weird knowing it's getting played on day. I was thankful. I was very thankful, but it felt weird knowing that content is out there being played to people going to their work. But yeah, that was wild, and it's wild to know that it's one of the best performing posts as well.
Yeah, like I think it's definitely my most well-performed post. I think beforehand there's been a couple that's been kind of maybe a little bit more, but that was like this year it's been the one that's been shared the most. I think it was just such a big moment for the scene, and I think it shows kind of your position in the scene as kind of like a leader almost, and like breaking new ground in the way that you're kind of getting booked for Palooza, getting all these different like festival bookings, different radio players, just different people outside of the scene who like care about you, and not just kind of one track, two track, but like the album. I've seen people talk about the album. How does that feel knowing that you're kind of breaking new ground?
It's wild. It feels like I've got a lot of responsibility. But you mentioned that when you said something similar to what one of my best friends said, Richo, on my 24th birthday, because I always exist in this little bubble, and this bubble consists of music.
Yeah.
Me obsessing over music, doing uni because it's something I have to do, and I really I want to do it, but it's music that I'm very obsessed over. So when you exist in this bubble, you don't really see all the things that happen around you. You try and appreciate them as much as you can, but it doesn't fully connect with you mentally.
Yeah.
And my friend told me that you don't realize how many people love you, and it hit me. And it's the same with the scene as a whole. I don't really realize that I am, like, when people tell me I'm humble, and in my head I'm like, I'm not. But okay, and it's mad to know that I'm looked at by other people like that, and maybe I should look at myself as a bit of a better person, maybe, I don't know. But that's something that I've been realizing. But with your question, I think it's a lot of responsibility. I don't know how to say this. Even Shaq says I'm a leader, but I don't get it, because I see Shaq as the leader.
I think Shaq is as well. To be fair.
Yeah. But I see him as the leader. Like, he has this very unapologetic aura around him, and the way he conveys his messages. That's what, like, I would imagine Che Guevara, like Castro, like those are the type of voices that overthrow governments. Like that's why I always see him as a leader. So it's wild when I get referred to as a leader. Yeah. But it's something I wanna be conscious of, and definitely try and accept it and not ruin it for other people.
And I think that is a big thing, because I think there are a lot of people who are kind of maybe in certain positions who will use that to kind of either elevate themselves and put people down, or just to put people down, or even just disassociate themselves with the scene. I think it'd be very easy for you now to just leave and like not bother with MC what's his name. It would just be go and deal with the pop, go and deal with the rock people, go and deal with the indie lads like I. But I think it's really great. I think that track that you put out recently for the scene, I can't remember what the name was.
Scenic Route.
Yeah, Scenic Route. Kind of showed, I think that's the like epitome of how you're a leader, and especially how you handled it. I know we had a conversation before you put it out.
Yeah, you were worried I was going to start dissing people.
Yeah, because I am one of the people that can't spell scene without a capital N, like without a doubt. But I've also kind of removed myself a little bit, where I maybe can't be that leader anymore, which I'd like to think I maybe was at one point. Where I kind of
think you've done great things for the scene, bro. No one can take that away from you at all.
Yeah, but it's now like I feel guilty, because now I kind of deal with like the people like Abby Nix, who I really love to kind of help out and like advance a bit more, and Left Blank, and all these great rappers that are kind of coming through, but maybe aren't quite there yet. And it's like, I feel like they are missing that a little bit. I know kind of Danny Riley's got his radio show. I know Jay is obviously doing great things here. Jono is kind of maybe moving a little bit away himself now, but still there's Nami. There's like loads of people doing great things, but it still feels like I kind of a little bit jealous as well. I want to go and do that. So it's great seeing you make that sort of track where it wasn't kind of tearing these people down at all. You were kind of lecturing them a little bit, but not in a kind of preachy way. It was kind of very much like, sort yourselves out.
Yeah.
I think like surely when you were making that track, you kind of realised that like that's your responsibility in a way. Yeah, it is great responsibility.
Yeah. Spider-Man, with great power comes great responsibility.
Yeah.
It all started in 96 with a heartbeat. I'm trying to stop mine while spilling ash all over the car seats. Smoking over one, I'm treating life like it's a party. Couldn't stop myself, not even if I had an army. Respect my heritage, but I only know it partly. This paint is permanent, drawn and used in a Sharpie. Bro, spreading one love.